Good morning, Stewart's Chapel. This is Brother Don Pierson, Don Counts, and this is Friday's devotion, and we're in James chapter 5, verse 10 and 11. I'd like to tell you that it's dark because we're out before daylight. But the truth is, we're doing this in the evening, and it's sun's already set, so I need to stop rambling and get done before we run out of time. Verses 10 and 11. My brethren, take the prophets, in other words, pay attention to the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord as an example of suffering and patience. Now, we've talked about patience in the book of James. That's a key word from chapter 1 on to now. And the word means endurance. It's not just sitting back there and taking it, and grinning and bearing it. No, this is a patience that is enduring. It's perseverance. It's a steadfastness in the midst of things. Suffering and patience. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. Verse 11, indeed we count them blessed who endure. You have heard of the perseverance of Job and seen the end intended by the Lord, that the Lord is very compassionate and merciful. Two powerful verses. Earlier today, I was in a Bible study, and we're going through Ephesians. And I had asked a few weeks ago before I went to Colorado for them to, coming from chapter 1, the very end of it, where Paul is giving God praise for what he sees in the life of the believers of Ephesians. And then he goes into praying for what they don't know yet, but what they need to know. And I had given the assignment a twofold assignment. And the first assignment was, what is it that when God looks at you, that he rejoices? What is it that that God looks at you that brings him joy? And the second thing is, what is it that when God looks at you, he's waiting for you to ask him for? Something that you don't even know yet that you need. But he's waiting for you to become enlightened so that you may ask him for what he's waiting to give you. Well, today in that Bible study, we returned to that. And the reason I'm bringing it up now is because one of the individuals said, with incredible emotion and tears, this man said to me, he said, God wants me to know the power and the joy of sharing. Now listen, the power and the joy of sharing in his suffering. And I thought, wow. And I know this individual's life, and that's exactly what God has been doing over the course of several weeks. And I thought, man, I don't think, I've asked that question many times, I don't think anybody has ever been so clear as what God really wanted. The truth is, Peter addresses that for us. James is doing it here. Paul addresses that. As believers, we are called to a life of following Christ, taking up our cross, which means that we are called to join in the sharing of his suffering. The sharing of his suffering. The prophets understood that. I'm not sure whether Job understood it. Definitely not in the midst of it. By the end, he did. I doubt if I've understood it often. It's easier for me to talk about sharing in his suffering with someone else. It's pretty hard for you and I to know the joy and the power of that when we're in the midst of the suffering. Would you not agree? He doesn't name any of the prophets. He just says the prophets. And the truth is, just about all of them shared in the suffering for doing the work and cause of Christ, of God. Whether it be Elijah or Jeremiah or Isaiah or whoever, they all seemed to suffer for doing what they were called to do, for the message that they were called to proclaim. You and I have a message to proclaim, but we also have a life that we are to live. And that life is very contrary to that of the world. We are to act differently, respond differently. We're to respond differently in words and in deeds. We are called to persevere, endure in the midst of suffering. The end of Job was far much better than the beginning of Job. But I guess if you had a conversation with Job, he would probably still weep and grieve over the children and the servants that he lost. Though God gave him back much, God did not bring back his children. God gave him others. I think it's okay to grieve in losses, but our losses and our suffering, though they may slow us down, they should never stop us. Persevere, my friends. Endure to the end. Love you.